Rotherham hadn't picked up so much as a point away from home all season. Their expectation was low ahead of the trip to St Mary's, but lo and behold, they left with a point. Glenn, I'm going to come to you first to try and sum this one up. I mean, we should be discussing a 4-0 win, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you've had the old cliche game of two halves. For me, this was a game of 3/3. I think for the first half an hour, I thought we were brilliant. We played some great stuff, pulled them apart all over the place, scored, goal disallowed, keeper made 3 or 4 blinded saves. And it looked for all the world like we were going to win 4-0, 5-0. Just needed that second goal to go in, and then you thought the roof would cave in on Rotherham. However, either side of half time, the 15 minutes before, 15 minutes afterwards, we went into passive rubbish mode where the wingers stopped playing high up the pitch. They were coming short. Walker Peters stopped getting forward on the right hand side, and the whole game seemed to be condensed into the middle third of the pitch, and we weren't going anywhere. Start of the second half, there was a bizarre sort of 5-minute section of play where we just kept the ball going absolutely nowhere, and it was like we were trying to, draw any sting out of the game, but Rotherham didn't have any sting whatsoever. And I don't know if we were giving them too much respect or waiting for the, some sort of onslaught, but that was rubbish. And then of course they scored, and the goal they scored was a massive catalogue of errors, starting with giving them the ball back. I'm sure we'll get onto that. Wrong players going up for the header. Flynn Downs went up for it. Should have been Bednarek. No one closes the knockdown. It's a terrible header by Harwood Bellis, just plops it down. And what the hell is Bazunu doing 15 yards off his line? It's just, once the ball has not been secured, and if the ball's bouncing around like that, get back on your line. If he's back on his line, he just catches it, in front of his face. It's never going to be a goal. The ball went in halfway up the goal. So it's not an easy finish, but it's a damn sight easier than it would have been if the goalkeeper had been in the right place. So it's a catalogue of errors, any one of which could have stopped that being a goal. But it's a lot of players need to be looking at themselves on that. And Bazunu, to be fair, he's improved recently, but that was a bad one, I thought. The last half an hour, it was kind of panic mode a little bit, trying to, it was like we couldn't believe we were level, and we tried to obviously throw a few players forward, lots of substitutions made, but we had Sekou Mara and Joe Aribo on the pitch by that stage, and you kind of just think that's not going to happen now. And Shea Adams wearing his Adidas trampolines with the ball just going everywhere. And he had a terrible game. He was involved in the goal, of course, with his header that hit the post and Stuart Armstrong knocked it in. That was kind of his one contribution. I don't really know what's happened to him. I mean, it's too easy to say he's, post-transfer window, but it really is. Since then, he's just not been the same player. He hasn't even been as good as the low bar that was set last season. So there's something amiss there. Russell Martin's comments afterwards, his definition of what a great performance is basically dominating the ball, 80% possession. He sees that as a great performance. My definition of a great performance is the first half an hour when we're stretching Rotherham and putting their goal under pressure, and their defenders are wondering where the hell the next attack's coming from. The first 30 minutes was a great performance. I thought the middle 30 wasn't. So it ended up just being as frustrating as you like. And it's almost criminal not to win a game. I mean, Rotherham, I know they're a relatively small club in this division. They've got a lot of injuries, but to not beat them, they're the most limited team we'll play this season. The 11 they had out on the pitch. So it was just a terrible result, really. Bearing in mind what we're trying to achieve this season.
I think that's the context, isn't it? And I do want to get on to the criticism of the team a little bit later, because I think it's important that we address that. But Alfie, should we be pleased with the performance, the domination, the 80% possession?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's impossible to be pleased about the performance and the domination and the possession when you haven't won the game against what Glen says is 100% the most limited team they'll play at St Mary's this season, because they had half of what is already one of the worst squads in the Championship missing. And I think they lost one for injury in the first half as well. But that being said, and I know you don't win football matches with stats. I mean, they did dominate the game. They had 3.5 expected goals to like 0.1. In 9 times out of 10, they win that game comfortably. Will Smallbone with a massive chance in the second half to make it 2-0, and that would have just settled things. And that would have been all right. What I totally agree with Glenn is the start to the second half was horrendous. Let's be honest. I mean, we spoke to Flynn Downs afterwards, and he called it himself walking football.
Yeah.
And when the player calls it that, it's a worrying sign. I think the team selection was fine for me. Adams coming in obviously did work. It wasn't a good performance, but he couldn't have done much else. Charlie needed to change. It was just a bit of fitness reasons. Russell said that he felt something during the week in training. And the only other criticism I'd have, apart from the start of that second half, is I didn't think the subs did anything, which Glenn has already touched on. And like Aribo and Mara, you want to give them chances. You want to sort of see what Russell Martin sees in training every week, apparently, but we still don't see it. And we'll get on to Stoke as well with Sekou Mara. The only one I would say on the subs is I saw Ryan Fraser getting a lot of criticism, but I actually felt that he created 2 of the biggest chances in the final 15 minutes of the game where they should have won. So I actually thought that if you're looking for moments from a substitute, he provided 2 moments to win the game if his players could finish. So I actually felt that Ryan Fraser probably did what was required of him, but I saw him getting a lot of stick, which is interesting.
I guess it's easier to lob the 3 of them together, isn't it, when you're talking about the 3 people that came on at the same time, maybe?
Definitely, yeah. But, there's a lot of, there's some of the reaction, and like I say, we'll get onto the criticism, has been about sort of tippy-tappy stuff. And I think the start of that second half was, but 9 times out of 10, you replay that game, they will win it. So I'm very frustrated about it. But at the end of the day, the result's business, and they've got an awful result.
I can't help but think if that Adam Armstrong goal wasn't offside, then we go on and we win that by an absolute mile. Eleanor, was that one of the most frustrating games you've seen at St Mary's, certainly in recent years?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember being sat there at half time and it wasn't perfect or anything, but they didn't offer anything at all. And I never thought they got into the game or irritated us. It was just way too easy, to be honest. And it was surprising when I saw them on the ball, to be honest, because I just thought we've just absolutely dominated possession. But I just can't believe we didn't win it, to be honest. I know we had 6 shots on goal and loads of corners in the first half, and the offside goal was a really nice goal as well, like a back heel. But it's just so frustrating because I thought the whole team played so well in the first half. And Flynn Downs played a really nice deep roll as well, and he was really good with the ball at his feet. And Smallbone had some nice decision making, spreading play, played a nice pass to Suleiman on the left edge of the box. Just really nice worked goals, really, really good play. It was almost like you could tell they were really enjoying playing that way. And then I just don't know what happened in the second half. I mean, we didn't even win headers a lot anymore. And it just seemed to collapse, really. I know there's times where we passed it around the back at St Mary's, and a lot of fans seem to get really angry that we're not going forward. And sometimes it's fine, because it's better than the opposition having possession. But it was just frustrating that we didn't put away these chances, and then we didn't create more and didn't kill the game off. And I was just so angry that we didn't win, because we have to get these points. We can't drop points, the playoffs is great if we get promoted, but equally, we should be higher than that, really. We should be killing games off, to be honest, with the team we have.
They look a long way off at the moment, to be fair. The subs, Glenn, do you think that's about trying to keep the squad happy, or do you think that's a bit about tired legs, having played on the Tuesday as well? They talk about the 3-game week and the need to manage the squad better.
Yeah, a little bit of both, I feel. As Alfie said, Charlie Alcaraz had to drop out for fitness reasons, and I get that. The substitutions at the time, I think we were 1-0 up at the time when the triple sub happened. I think it was just before the goal. Is that right? And it definitely seemed to me an effort to sort of preserve certain players' legs, like Stuart Armstrong came off, didn't he? And he's made such a difference since he's come into the team, and taking him off, sort of, he dropped Alcaraz into that role, didn't he? And it just wasn't as good. But when I thought Ryan Fraser, it's interesting enough. He said he had a couple of moments. He did have a couple of moments, and that is what a substitute is supposed to do, make an impact. But I thought generally he wasn't great. Aribo and Mara, you kind of know what you're not going to get from those two. So, I certainly think in Sekou Mara's case, it was, they're trying to get something out of him. They obviously still think there's a player in there. He came on as the first sub against Stoke, didn't he? Which was a bit of a surprise. But yeah, I struggle to see it a lot of the time, and I've struggled since midway through last season to see where the player is in there. But better judges than me have picked him for France under-21s, and he's being coached by Thierry Henry there, so there must be a player in there. So maybe the club are failing him more than the other way around. I don't know, but yeah, I didn't think the subs really helped us, and conceding a goal straight after definitely was not part of the plan. I don't think he would have taken Adam Armstrong or Stuart Armstrong off that early had Rotherham equalised already. But that's what happens sometimes, isn't it? When I do think managers do try and be a little bit too clever with it sometimes. It's an international week coming up, so who cares if Stuart Armstrong plays another 10 minutes? But there you go.
James is one of our patrons, and he says that hugely frustrating day yesterday, but if you would have offered Saints fans 7 points from 9 before those 3 games, most would have snapped your hand off, which I think is a fair comment. Again, it highlights how poor the strikers are, in particular Che. Not sure why he started yesterday. I think we've touched on some of that, James, but is that a fair assessment of those games? We were expecting Alfie to probably lose against Leeds and then maybe nick a draw at Stoke and then win convincingly yesterday. So all said and done, looking back on those last 3 games, it's probably where the return that we thought we were going to get.
Yeah, and I think that is something that Russell Martin said at the end of the week. I think at the end of the day, you need to beat Rotherham at home, second from bottom, and it doesn't excuse that by any means. But he did say that if you were to look, reflect on the week, it's been a good week, a positive week for the club, and I think it had been. They really massively important result against Leeds. It had to turn aside a little bit. The atmosphere was really good, and I thought the atmosphere actually yesterday for the most part of the game good as well, despite obviously the delay to the second half and everything that came with that. I thought that they did get behind the team. That was as a result of the week they've had. The Stoke, we'll get into the Stoke one more clearly, but I think they showed real tenacity and real steel in that Stoke game. Again, the second half wasn't a brilliant footballing performance, but in terms of a defensive performance and defending the box, Bednarek and Harwood Bellis, gelling, it was a good week. And I don't leave this week, despite not beating Rotherham, concerned in any way or thinking, maybe we should make a change or anything like that, because at the end of the day, they could have quite easily had 9 points from 9, had a couple of different chances gone in. And yeah, we touched on Che. It's not a pile on Che, but he had 3 big chances in the first 10 minutes, gave the ball back to them for the goal. So he's got a lot of work to do to get back into the team now, because Charlie's definitely ahead of him, 100%. And when Ross Stewart comes back as well, he's going to have even more competition. So I'm not sure what he's playing at really.
Are we? His inability to find the back of the net hasn't changed. I don't think we were too surprised. But Ross Stewart could have a bit of an impact. I kind of feel he's going to have to be the signing of the season if we're going to push on. There's going to be a lot on his shoulders. If this is more poor recruitment, then we've absolutely blobbed it. And he's close to coming back, Alfie. Was that the update this week?
Yeah, I asked Russell on Friday, and look, he's an honest guy, but he's very keeps cards close to his chest when it comes to team selection and fitness and stuff. But he says hopefully we'll see him very, very soon. He's still not fully involved in first team training; he just does little bits with the first team. So I wouldn't imagine he'll be starting a whole way in a couple of weeks' time. But hopefully we'll see him in the next couple of games off the bench.
Let's just touch on the frustrations around the ground. I mean, Eleanor, we played 11 games now, so it's almost more or less a quarter of the way through the season, and we're 13 points behind Leicester, 11 behind Ipswich, I think. To me, it seems that is what the frustrations are about, not necessarily the result yesterday. It's more of a bigger picture. Can you see why people are getting frustrated? Because it's not where we thought we were going to be.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at Leicester, I feel like we've got probably a bit more, or we had a bit more work to do than they did, maybe. As in, I think they've obviously had some good decision making and got some really good experience in. Like, there's players there that probably should just be in the Premier League, to be honest. So that's probably why they're dominating so much, because I think they've just got a lot of stuff right. But I think it depends because of who we've played. I mean, when I was at Hillsborough, I remember it was a really good game. Like, the possession was great. We absolutely dominated in the last 10 minutes or whatever it was. And we were just basically, they couldn't get the ball off of us. But equally, when they got back into the game, if we hadn't scored that second goal, obviously we had Prowsey then, and other players, but it would have been a bit awful if we'd drawn that game, because they're obviously one of, because I thought Rotherham were awful, one of the worst teams in the Championship, and I just think it's down to who we've played really. Although I think Russell has had to get a lot of things right in a very short space of time, because obviously the aim is promotion, and nothing less. And I feel like it's a lot to kind of fix in a very short space of time, because you can't really leave a lot of room for errors. We can't really drop a lot of points if we're to finish first or second. So I think it's just who we've played really, and it's just been frustrating with some of the games, because Ipswich are a really good team, but they just sort of sat back and it was just an awful game. So I think it's just down to the opponents really, and it's just frustrating that it's kind of not all fallen into place very quickly, because we can't afford to really drop points.
They seem quite quick to call the fans out a bit, though, Alfie. I know I didn't miss this. He was having words, wasn't he, Russell Martin, with one of the fans after the game. I missed it, but I read about it when you were reporting on it. He felt like he had to step in and defend the team.
Yeah, it's interesting one. I mean, we spoke to Flynn. I mentioned Flynn was the one who sort of alerted me to it, because I didn't see it either. And there'll be some full quotes from him coming out tomorrow morning. But no one prompted him on him. He was saying it was absolutely mental. They were getting booed after that performance, and obviously I asked Russell about it, and he sort of explained what was going on. And there was a bit of something on the touchline. To an extent, I completely understand the frustration of the day, but I do agree with Flynn and Russell. It was a decent enough performance. It wasn't a performance that deserved players to be abused. As well, they didn't lose 2-0 to Rotherham. They did dominate the game. They did create enough chances. They missed the big moments. But I think I'm always a little bit cautious. When Flynn's saying it, when Russell's saying it, I'm always in the back of my head thinking, yeah, you could probably not say that and just save yourself a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, they must be talking about it in the dressing room. Glen, couple of things
reflects the view of the club. Yeah.
Couple of things before we put it to bed. You can understand the frustrations, I guess, can't you? Because I mean, we're all feeling it, and it's not just that game yesterday. It's the last few years, isn't it? We still haven't turned that corner. Or it doesn't feel to me like we have.
I think you're giving a lot of fans way too much credit that they actually think past the 90 minutes they've just seen. Taking that game in isolation, it's a game against a poor team that we really should have won. Obviously, I think a lot of people have got it in their head that they don't like Russell Martin's brand of football, and it doesn't matter what happens. I mean, I thought the first half hour was brilliant, as I said earlier, and the players stopped playing that way. I can't imagine Russell Martin was sat on the side saying, Camel Dean, stop making runs, Kyle, stop going forward. I can't imagine he was doing that. They seem to just don't seem to need much encouragement to go into a real sort of passive mode of just keeping the ball with no stretching of the opposition. And that's Gordon Strachan used to call it propaganda football, where you're just bolstering your stats and you're not going anywhere. I mean, Hull, that's who we're playing next week. Rotherham, they score from a long ball and a knockdown. And I'm not saying we should smash the ball up the pitch, but we do need to.
There's a time and a place.
Keep trying to pass the ball forwards.
And interesting stat for you though, they have played the ball forwards more time than any other team in the Championship. Most progressive passes, most progressive carries of any team in the Championship as well, or top two.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I'm not a big fan of the stats and stuff like that, but I guess that's only really, relevant to the amount of possession you have. If you have the ball for 80% of the time and you pass the ball forward one more time than a team that has it 40% of the time, then I think that's the frustration. I think people have preconceived ideas about the Russell Martin's style of football is going to be a problem, and I think if it works properly like it did in that first half an hour, then there's absolutely no problem with it. But the players have got to be A, good enough, and B, willing enough to keep doing it for the 90 minutes. And I believe he's made that point before. If we hadn't have had that really stodgy half an hour in the middle of the game, then I just don't think Rotherham would have got near our goal.
Yeah.
But we invited them onto it, and that's the problem.
Last thing, Glen, can you just clear up this Che chucking the ball back to their keeper business? It seemed to me that they wanted to make a change. They played it out. We gave it back to them. It wasn't a head injury, was it? It was odd.
It was bizarre. I didn't think anything of it at the time because I assumed that someone must have been injured. and that's why the goalie threw the ball out. If it's simply a case of if it's simply a case of they wanted to make substitutions, then the goalie's an idiot for throwing the ball out, because 99 times out of 100 you would not get that ball back. You know, why would you do that? You wait till there's a natural break in play. I mean, there's it's a strange one. If it's as reported that we were just being nice and giving it back to them, then that's just absolutely absurd.
Well, it's really frustrating because as a segue into the Stoke game, during that game, I think Jan Bednarek put the ball out of play when there was a Stoke player injured under the sort of last 10 minutes under the cosh, and Ben Pearson didn't give the ball back and actually ended up throwing in for an attack. And Russell Martin was really frustrated about that on Tuesday night as well. So the fact that they've then gone and done something similar the other way around Saturday
feels like they're not learning. They're not learning.